I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into this slicing. Yes. Let's look. I already demonstrated transient, and we have some other options such as beat or region, and we can simply here we're dividing this into equal regions, but maybe not as useful. Lastly, I meant to say, we also have a manual where you can go ahead and click this and manually select places, which I perhaps find the most valuable. Yes, because certainly the transient and percentage is a fast way to get really, it's like fun, really, because you just drop a sample, put slices, change some slices, and you get all those samples on the keyboard in a very, fast way. So we can also do these manually, I believe. There you go. So and then very quickly we can start making some music with that. Okay, and then I want to show you some other methods for slicing samples in Ableton. The first method, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, is use simpler. Make sure, and I'm going to demonstrate now. With a drum loop. Yes, I'm going to make another demonstration, and this is going to be with a drum loop. So simpler. The first method is using simpler, and I have this other sample that is from the band Tune Yards, and it's a drum break essentially with some vocals on it too. So I'm going to play that. Oops, in the original octave. So that's the sample that I have, and I would like to make, let's say I want to make drums, my own drums. I would like to record, I like the sound of this sample, but I would like to sort of create my own rhythm with this, yes? Now, what's the problem here? We have the two main instruments like kick and snare, boom da, boom da da, boom da da, boom boom da, boom da da, boom da da. But we also hear some other sounds, not noises, other sounds in the background that are like a shaker or whatnot, that are being played in rhythm. Yes, I don't know exactly what it is, but. Yeah, right. So if we would certainly want those to be in time, in whichever time is we are going to create. So let's say I wanted to create a song with this, but my tempo is slightly different. Yes. So let's say my tempo would be, or perhaps even, let's see what happens if I make that even slower. Let's say I want something like that, but I want to make it with these sounds. Well, before I create some of the slices, since these drums have a subdivision there that I would like that to be in time, what I need to do is make sure that this sound will be in time with my metronome first before creating any of these slices. Yeah, so you can see that that is not the case right now. Yes, it's not matching my metronome sound. So what can I do? I can click on this button, warp. Yes, so what warp is going to do is actually something that so far hasn't worked this way. It's going to change the tempo. So far in this class, I meant the tempo of that is to say the speed at which this sample is played, but without altering its pitch. Yes, so it's going to make it slower in this case, but it's not going to sound lower in pitch. Yes, so far in the synthesis class, we've learned like, oh, if you change a waveform, if you change the frequency, then it sounds lower. And in the classic mode of in the classic mode of simpler, we found that behavior as well. Now, warping obtains this by we are not going to explain right now how it does it, but we are going to explain that it does it, yes? So here, if you click that, Ableton is sort of guessing that this sample that I have here corresponds to 2 bars. I didn't do anything. It just simply analyzed the file for us and kind of guessed that. If I change this, at some point, Ableton is going to say, notice that 1 bar, 2 bar becomes 1 bar, and it's just like, oh, it looks like now it's 1 bar of your music. Yes, it's comparing the audio that is dropped there to the tempo that I've set in Ableton. Not to the tempo, just trying to guess if it's a bar or not, or 2. And I can click on the loop button and play just one by myself and count really how many bars there are. So Ableton is guessing for us, but it's good for us to kind of check on that, yes? 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, right? So as it happens, this sample is already cut into a perfect 2-bar beat, yes? So it's important that you have a perfect cut before warping the sample, so that then it's going to match. So let me show you. If I click now on warp, remember this was my tempo, and if I play it right now, it doesn't match, yes? But if now I'm going to click on warp, so I feel at this time I would need more volume because I'm hearing this quite quite low. So I should have some headphones, which I don't have right now, but it doesn't matter. So I think the quality of the audio with the level that I'm able to hear right now is a little bit poor. So as you notice, if I stretch this file really a lot, so if I want to make it like super slow now, it kind of makes it still, yeah, it plays the sample without changing the pitch, but it starts to degrade a little bit. So you have to keep that in mind, yes? Warping works, but the more you ask to it, the more the degradation of the audio file, yes? So let's maybe play it a little bit not so aggressive. Yes, so now you can see that fits. If I were to say I'm only interested in the first bar, I would try to play with this bracket until I feel that this loop is only 1 bar long. 1, that is not, and I will find that if I put it here, let's unwarp it. So I had this. So tum-ta, pum-ta. Right? So, oops, if I put it about here, let's see if that works. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. There you go. So there I could make also a loop. I'm just trying to show you how I would do it if it was not already cut for me, yes, because this sample actually was a perfect duration of 2 bars. But yeah, let's continue with that, and that is 1 bar. And now going back to slicing, the first option is use simpler. Make sure the tempo of the sample matches the tempo of your song, particularly important for percussive samples, yes? So this is important, as that explains. For other kind of samples, maybe this step of just adapting the tempo before you slice it is not as important, depending on the material, yes? Achieve desired slices, we can achieve that by saying, so now I'm gonna, saying transient and with the different methods that I demonstrated, yes? So, or in this case, perhaps beat is going to be interesting. since now I have this and it creates 1 per beat. Yes, looks like now that is where it has to be. And so I've achieved the slices that I wanted. And then I'm going to right click and choose either slice to drum rack or slice to new MIDI track. Both will create a drum rack with slices. The only difference being that the latter will do it on a new track. Yes. So the next step is to right click here and say slice to new MIDI track or drum rack. So let's see what happens here. Now this has created something more similar to what before we had used for drums, which was just dropping here at one of these drum packs. Yes. And so we're introduced now with the concept of drum rack. What is this drum rack? It has several buttons here to the left. And you can see that those buttons will hide or show certain things. Perhaps we need this one at the lowermost, and we can see that these corresponds to slices. We have now several instances of Simpler. Yes, each slice has an instance of Simpler loaded onto it. So you could say, well, what's the advantage of this? I actually just had this already here, right? It's Simpler, and I was playing the slices. I could play a pattern here. Oops, that's not the right track. I could do, that's right, but the advantage of having this slices now stored on a drum rack is that if I wanted to make any changes to the sound, as I said, by filtering or into any other changes that I can make here in the amplitude envelope or whatnot, then those changes would be applied to one slice individually. So let's look at that. Let's say I wanted that kick to be more to be darker, yes. So, and then that snare, I would like that snare to have more of a decay, really, and I'm going to expand this, yes, and say, hey, this slice, the snare. I want that snare in the amplitude envelope to for that I need to make this as classic, and I want that to have more release so that this snare sort of decays more release. And this sound, I'm going to use it as sort of hi-hat, so I'm going to create a filter, a high-pass filter, and it's going to sound like this. Yes, so. Right? So now you can see I'm starting to manipulate these samples, and I'm using one slice has a high-pass filter on, another one has a low-pass filter on, and I have more freedom to operate on these different slices. So that's the advantage of, let's say, exporting or moving from this slice view in a Simpler to a drum rack format. So that was the first method, and then the second method, use audio clip, and I say it's a recommended method, and perhaps we'll learn why is it a recommended method next class, but I'll just demonstrate what it is right now. And in this method, we drop the clip, and I should say audio clip, on an audio track, yes. So instead of doing slices with Simpler, in this method we will simply drop this into an audio track now, since we were talking about MIDI and audio tracks. So now I simply double click or shift tab. I'm going to turn on Keycaster. Shift tab. Shift tab. Yes. That enables the waveform view. And now I can simply... now these transients have been pre-selected for me by Ableton, and I can double click and create what we this yellow markers, which are essentially what we call warp markers. We don't need so much to know what warp markers are, but there's several ways to do this, but I'm gonna do it like this by creating warp markers here. And you can, of course, just hover your mouse and it becomes a speaker, and you can listen to that selected portion. So there's a snare there. I should mark that one and so forth. And now I can, this method continues with make sure warp is on, create warp markers by double clicking or clicking followed by Command I until you achieve all the desired manual slices. Double click and choose slice to new MIDI track. In the next prompt, choose warp marker. So that's what I'm doing. I'm right click here and I'm gonna say slice to new MIDI track, and it says create one slice per, and I have the different options: warp marker, transient, bar, blah blah blah. As I said, I chose warp markers to denote which places I wanted slices, so I'm going to choose warp marker. And then for slicing preset, there are options, but we won't look into that right now. We leave it as built in, and we say OK. So now we have a similar situation than before. So I'm going to say this is method 2, and this was method 1. Yes. So here you can see they're pretty similar. Now we have this slices. Another way to uncover the simpler view is to double click on it, and each one has their own simpler instance. Each slice is a simpler instance. Now the difference, if we just take a look at it, is that these knobs that in method 1 are simply left as macro 1 through macro 8, and they're sort of grayed out. In this case, we have some controls here, such as attack, delay, sustain, and release. We know that, the ADSR envelope, and a few more, yes? So those have sort of been created for us by Ableton, and I could make now all my sounds to have a release, and this would apply to all sounds, yes? Now all sounds have release. Let's demonstrate that. Yes, and you can see that while the release, in order for us to hear that, perhaps the sounds would need to be a little bit longer. And so forth. So that's the difference between those two slicing methods, that essentially both create several instances of simpler that store the slices that we had created, but the method 2 additionally creates some creates assignment for this macro knobs and assigns them to things such as the amplitude envelope and a few other parameters that we haven't learned yet.